Thank you, Minister and panel.
Let's ask them to move your mic closer. Move it closer. I don't know. They seem to have moved it a bit. The other candidates, we could hear them clearly.
Am I more audible?
Yes, yes, perfect.
Thank you. Minister and panel, I studied for a B.Juris degree, and many, many moons ago when I initially enrolled for that degree, back at the time at the University of Durban, Westville as it was, that was the bespoke degree for prosecutors. Ordinarily, those who wanted to go into the profession as attorneys would do the B.Proc. I had always wanted to be a prosecutor. I then studied for an LLB degree. And then when I joined the Directorate Special Operations, colloquially the Scorpions, I realized that having investigators and prosecutors under one roof meant that I needed something more than just those two qualifications. And I then enrolled for a diploma in criminal justice and forensic auditing at the University of Johannesburg. And what these degrees do is they have given me a different approach to how I go about looking at crime, looking at the criminality, looking at evidence, and how to assess and judge, both in terms of evidence and the law. It has held me in good stead in terms of being able to deal with a varied type, as the panel and minister would see from my legal background. It has helped me to deal with a whole host of matters. So in terms of being a national director, it gives me a strong legal background, a strong legal framework. What it has done is, having put me in the prosecution service, having exposed me to the kinds of work I've then had to do, the managerial roles that I've had to play, that then says, let us look at her. Should she then be considered as an NDPP? It is not foregone conclusions that these legal requirements actually put you in that position. It is the experience that has allowed me to be considered.
Let's move to that area then that you talked about the experience. The mic is off, sorry. Let's move to that area of your experience, and I'll just go through as you have summarized it. 96 until 98, a prosecutor.
Correct.
98 to 2009, state advocate.
Correct. In 1998, yes, till 2006, 2004 April was a senior state advocate.
Okay, yeah, we'll come to that because I'm looking at it, perhaps maybe you'll have to explain.
Sure.
Because I'm noticing that you've got state advocate and then you've got senior state advocate and they are overlapping. June 1998 until November 2009. And then you've got senior state advocate, December 1999 to March 2004. Would you explain that one? Because there's an overlap there.
Unless that...
Just under 6.
My apologies, Minister. That would be a typo.
Okay.
The state advocate is from 1 June 1998 to 30 November of 1999.
Of 1999, okay.
1999.
No, it's correct.
Then the senior state advocate from 1 December 1999 till 31 March 2004.
Okay. So that has been corrected. So we want to go through properly so that we have
Understood.
the record. And then you've got under the DSO, senior DDPP, 2006 to 2009. That's correct.
That is correct.
And then again, until 2019, just explain that one. So you moved from DSO, but when you moved to NPA, it was still the same position.
It was still the same position. It was when we were disbanded, Minister.
Yes.
So you kept your rank. You, however, chose an office, and I was allocated by choice to the DPP office in Pretoria.
In Pretoria.
Yes.
And then you moved then to the head office from 2019 to 2022.
That is correct.
And then you became the head of investigating directorate from 2022.
1 March 22 to date.
Till to date. Okay. Then we move This one you're saying you moved from 2022 ne? To date.
to date.
Okay. And then as we look at that, in terms of your work experience, if you can tell us in terms of your areas of involvement in law, as per the areas, I see here you've flagged some of the issues, your legal background, in terms of the areas, criminal law, all matters are related. Administrative law, you didn't explain much. You just said none except labor matters. And then on constitutional law as well, you just said that it's just filing papers. Maybe explain that. You didn't provide more details on that one.
So in terms of the administrative law, I always, and if I'm wrong, I'll be corrected, I always saw the involvement of prosecutors in the disciplinary processes as part of an administrative process. And so that is where the overlap between administrative as well as labor, because it is a different issue, it is also dealt with differently, Minister. And that, I hope, clarifies. In terms of constitutional law, it is in relation to the criminal work we do, but in the matters where applications had been brought against the NPA, to wit in some of our matters, both in the Celebi and the Pistorius matter, there was then the filing of constitutional law papers, applications being filed in the Constitutional Court. However, in both those matters, the NPA was fortunate in that the justices decided on the papers and therefore did not need to hear us on both those matters.
Okay.
But that would be the full extent of my involvement actually in the constitutional law framework, Minister.
And I see you've been appearing in court. You stopped appearing because you are now head of IDEC.
My last matter, yes, was November 2021. I had always liked to prosecute. I was one of very few deputies or a senior deputy that still wanted to go to court. I did organized crime matters. I had an affinity for cash in transit matters, organized corruption, crime matters. So yes, I was in court. And I think that also helps me a lot. I get to see people differently and I get to see the institution differently.
Okay. Let's go to your managerial level in experience. I think the Section 3 deals with prosecutorial experience, which we have dealt with. You've been a prosecutor almost all your life. We're moving into the managerial experience. You've not given us more in terms of what you are currently managing. I see here you're saying I have supervised at any given time between 20 to 30 people.
That was
this
before,
is only at IDEC.
Before IDEC.
Before IDEC.
Before
it says
IDEC.
at IDEC. Okay.
Yes.
Take us through.
So how it does work, Minister, and I'm sure that you and the panelists are aware, when you are in the office of a DPP or you are the coordinator of a specific component, there's very few persons that you are responsible for, and that would limit the numbers. In my time at the DSO, I managed investigators, prosecutors, we managed analysts, and we managed the cases. But it wasn't more than 20 or 30 at a time. So
At the DSO?
At the DSO.
Okay.
At the DPP office, when I went there, you manage a team. It depends on which cases. Most of the time at organized crime at the DPP office, we did have a coordinator of organized crime. I was a deputy there. I then managed those persons whose cases I oversaw. And you also then managed, Minister and panelists there, everyday administrative issues. So whether it was leave, whether it was discipline issues, whether it was resource allocation, case allocation. But in the main, one managed their operational issues. And then as a manager in the office of a DPP, you then form part of the senior management structure of the DPP. And so you attend to ensuring that we achieve the annual operational plan, you make input into the strategic plan, and you ensure that the strategic objectives of that division and or component are achieved.
Okay. In that office, how many people?
In the office of the DPP?
Of the DPP that you were reporting to you?
In the office where I was at the organized crime component of the DPP office.
So because of, based on the number of cases, it will be between 6 and 7 at times?
Give or take, yes, that is correct, Minister.
Okay. And then now with where you are
At
You
IDAC?
can have your water.
I hope you don't mind. I have
No, we
juice.
don't mind.
Sorry.
Feel comfortable.
My sugar levels were running low.
Okay. No, it's okay.
So thank you. At IDAC currently, we are a staff contingent of 128. As Minister is aware, we are only a national footprint at this time, even though we have cases over and beyond the province of Gauteng. We are 63 females, 65 males, and we have quite a varied representation also in terms of our race equity. And we are quite proud that we are 63 to 65. And I think as the gender equity, we might overtake the males soon enough. We are still busy, Minister, with recruitment. In fact, last week, financial investigators were being interviewed. There were 33 positions, and interviews happened over a span of 3 days, 11 per day, and that process continues. So the staff contingent will grow, but the management currently is of 128, which includes myself.
And that's besides managing the Section 38s are managed by you directly or by various advocates?
The Section 38s, I have engagements with them. It is preferred, however, Minister, that the Section 38s are managed by the Deputy Director who oversees that matter, given that it is a prosecution-led model. And because we have to account for the work, I would not be able to account legitimately for the work. Auditor General knows that when we sign for things, we must be able to say work was done, money is to be paid. So the practicalities are that they fall within a team.
And then tell us about your management style. You didn't highlight. Your form is highly summarized, so I'm going to probe quite a lot from you.
Absolutely, as Minister is entitled to do. Sometimes I think that I'm too much of a people's person, but I think that has held me in good stead.
What do you mean by that?
I am consultative. We must talk to one another, top down, bottom up. It's not slogans. You know, Minister, when you come into a new unit, one that must still stamp its footprint, you have to know yourself. What that meant for me was, what would I want from the people who come to IDAC? And you cannot have them guessing. So it was lots of meetings. It was lots of operational meetings, getting to understand the landscape and what had come before me. My management style is to know my people. I pride myself. I'm perhaps one of the few who knows, if not 90% of the staff by name. I may not know everyone by first name. I will know them by their surname. I take the time to get to know them, because if you do not know your people's strengths and weaknesses, it becomes an impediment to how we operate. It becomes an operational issue. And I think the one last thing there for me, in an environment such as ours, it's not just gender and race and cultural diversity. We are bringing together people from different capabilities, different qualifications. Everyone knows better. Investigators want to be better than prosecutors. Financial investigators are better than criminal investigators, and vice versa. You have to be measured. You have to be tolerant, and you have to be understanding. And I think that has been how I have conducted myself.
Some people say that those who are consultative, they tend to be indecisive.
Consultation does not mean indecisiveness. In an environment such as ours, the first 2 years were consultative.
Okay.
Since IDAC became permanent in 19 August 2024, trust me, Minister, we have to be decisive. We are permanent. What do we need to do? We were given an opportunity 2 years prior to map the landscape. We are decisive in the things we do.
Okay, let's move to the next segment, which is segment 5, section 5. You have indicated here you have not been suspended for any position. You've never been subjected to any disciplinary process.
Correct.
Can I confirm that? In terms of your office, in PA, we've got the Office of Ethics and Accountability. Have you been reported there?
I did receive a letter yesterday that as a result of the complaints, one of those was escalated to the Office of Ethics and Accountability. I'm not sure what was sent to them. I just received a letter, Minister, that said, we have received a complaint. We will not be looking at it. It has been escalated to the Office of the Minister. But that was yesterday. I cannot give you details. I do apologize. That is what I got.
The ethics office didn't look at it.
The ethics office looked at it and said they will not be conducting a pre-investigation. The matter is referred to the Office of the Minister.
Okay, I have not received it. We'll look into it. But as far as we know, there's nothing that currently has been lodged. Okay. And in terms of a complaint brought to you against anybody, you are saying none. Are you a member of anybody?
No, Minister.
Except
for, I think as prosecutors we are automatically members of the Legal Practice Council. But I should say, way back when prosecutors were asked to be members of a union, I am a member of a labor union. I have been since 2000, as are all prosecutors. I think whether you're at the PSA or wherever it is you are affiliated, but that is a membership. I don't know if I don't want to miss anything.
Is allowed for you to be a member of a labor, you know.
Not
it's senior management that is not supposed to be members of labor.
I know that we all, I know many of us way back, I think this happened in 2000. I'll have to check my membership. I've never used it, Minister, to be clear. I've never had cause to use it.
My understanding is that the minute you become a head, you shouldn't be, because you are now part of the employer.
Yes, I've not used it. And I don't know if something has to be rectified, of course I'll rectify it. Not having used it, Prof, I'm not sure what the rules would have been.
I just want to check, when you say you've been a member since 2000, surely there are interactions if you're a member. Either you pay or you get correspondence, or are you saying it's a dormant membership?
I have only back in 2000 when I became a member, I know that it goes off my salary, but there haven't been communications because I've not needed to communicate and they haven't communicated with me.
And it's still deducted up until now?
I'm sure that it still is.
Okay.
I don't want to say no. Then someone looks in my salary advice and it is. I will look, and Minister, I take your point. And I think it falls away in the sense of I've never used it. It's there. I do understand my responsibilities, forming part of a management where I'm an employer, and I will make sure that if that is an issue, that must be rectified.
I'm trying to check. We tend to be more vigilant for our own bank statements, so that even that 99 cents that is deducted for
Yes.
apps, you mean you haven't checked?
No, I'm saying I'm sure it is still being deducted, but I have no communication over and beyond the deduction from my salary.
Okay.
Thanks, Minister. Advocate Johnson, we have to get this one clear. You not having that engagement with the union,
Yes.
does not impact on the validity of membership. You're saying you are a member, so the fact that you have never accessed the membership benefits.
Not at all.
That is actually irrelevant in as far as the validity of your membership is concerned.
Understood.
And now I just wanted to understand, is it your position that you were not aware that as a manager, senior manager, you are actually not supposed to be part of a union?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And hi, Advocate Johnson.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
How are you, ma'am?
I'm good, ma'am.
Thank you. And you are saying your specialty has been labor law in the main?
No. Criminal law.
Criminal law?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Only
So labor
criminal.
law came in only when you're representing or dealing with NPA labor law matters?
Yes, and in all of those, I have only chaired in the labor law matters. I have not represented any employee in the labor law matters, given that as a senior manager, I saw that as an impediment. And we had long debates about those back in the day, but I had only chaired in labor matters of the NPA.
Okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
this is interesting. Okay, Johnson, you are a lawyer, right?
Sure.
And for all intents and purposes, if you were to chair any disciplinary hearing, there would be two parties there.
Correct?
And for all intents and purposes, one would be represented by an employer representative or an employee representative.
Correct.
Didn't you get curious, having signed the form at one point, about the fact that there is this relationship that you have with this body that actually appears before you as a chairperson in a hearing, and you are a manager, senior manager in the space? Didn't it occur to you, at least for you to be a little curious?
I haven't been, and I know that it's not.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, I do not want this to seem as though it's a glib answer. It isn't a glib answer. It didn't occur to me because I was just doing what was within the mandate and what was expected of me. I chaired the disciplinary, knowing that I had to be objective on all fronts. Who appears should not be relevant. It is the evidence that is placed before you. That is all that I could and did adjudicate on. If you start to wonder about parties, you make yourself prejudiced and biased to the process and should therefore recuse yourself.
No, Ms. Johnson. That's not even my point. My point is simply, you are a member of this union, you have joined it. And my colleague sitting there has said to you, the fact that you have joined this union means that there would be deductions, whether you received service or not, it's not the issue. All that I was at least interested in from you in this context is, having been a senior manager for that long, didn't it occur to you that for all intents and purposes, I've been a member of one of these unions, not on the basis of whether you like or you dislike any of the parties or you have to believe or not believe them, because that was not the part you had to adjudicate. What you had to adjudicate is the complaint that is before you, not the persons that are before you.
Correct.
But then I wanted to understand, that's why I asked you, didn't it occur to you to be curious one day, to just wonder, what happened with my membership with this union for the past 25 years? That's all that I'm asking you.
No, sir, unfortunately, I
No,
didn't.
that's fine, thanks.
Chair. No, thank you so much. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
It's very interesting because, I mean, I just want to ask you a question. Is it the same if you're in a disciplinary hearing and the person is in front of you, the union rep is there? Is it the same union or is it a different union? All the staff members in that unit of where you are, how many unions? Perhaps I should ask how many unions are there, because there will be a majority union and which will be recognized. And if you're a member of that union and there appears to be a disciplinary hearing, and here you sit and you chair, and there's a union rep and there's the union member and you also union member, doesn't that constitute a close conflict of interest?
So just to be clear, sir, I think the last disciplinary I chaired is well over 10 years ago. And I cannot remember which union would have appeared. But what I can say is in the past 10 years, I haven't chaired any disciplinary matters. And I am not aware of the memberships of the staff at IDEC. I think the only one that I am aware of, only because staff would indicate the PSA is having a meeting, and they would usually go to the head office at the VGM, but I'm not aware of their affiliations, to be clear.
Thank you very much. In these disciplinary hearings, there usually would be a declaration of interest up front. And I'm sure you might have gone through that exercise. And at that point, even if it's 10 years ago, did it occur to you that you'd also say, I'm a member of a union, even if my membership I'm no longer actively aware of? That's one. And also, as senior managers, when you are negotiating salary, unions are negotiating this or that percent, didn't you take interest that my union is bargaining for this salary? Yes, I'm a senior manager and so forth. What will be the outcomes and so on? Or even unions coming to say, as a member, would like you to advise us on A, B, C, D, E.
So on the second point about the salaries, you will find, Prof, if you speak to people at the NPA and colleagues who'd come with me a long way, that was one of the lesser things I did worry about. And I hadn't ever been approached by any union, let alone the one for which I have a membership. I left salary issues. As a senior manager, that had always been my take. If there is a salary progression to be given, we will be told by the NPA. I didn't engage. I never asked anyone to engage on my behalf either, not in all of my career, because that isn't why I was at the NPA. I am aware of colleagues who would have, but I didn't. And quite a few of us, by the way, I'm not a saint, quite a few of us did not, because the work came first. In terms of the first question, Prof, I honestly cannot recall. I know that we had to sign forms. I just cannot tell you which ones I would have signed at the time. But if it is an issue of contention, I would rather go back and look at it than give an answer that I'm not confident of.
Let's move on to this one. Let's move on. I'd like to go through the form section 6 on the financial and proprietor. Can I confirm that you hold no directorship,
Correct?
nor any business interest?
None.
Okay. And you have declared that there's no health issues that would impede you from doing any of your work?
None.
I don't know if it's me who's mistaken, but I noticed on number 4, you didn't tick. Have you ever had civil judgments, maintenance order, debt review order?
Not. I think
You
that's
don't
just
have.
yes.
Yeah, because I see there on 9, I didn't have that, so I wanted to check that one.
None.
Okay. I think that's the questionnaire we had with you. Then I'll move to the next segment of our questions that will come also link even to performance, which other members will follow. Now, you've just taken us through what you are doing at IDEC and having to lay the foundation for 2 years, and therefore since 2024, formally starting to even fill the vacancies and closing. If you can take us through the vision, should you be appointed as an NDPP? What are the issues that we'll have to deal with, and how will you respond in looking at where NPA is today and what you have as a vision of it for tomorrow?
So Minister, if I could start with performance. Currently, in terms of the NPA's performance, the 3 areas where the performance is not what it should be are the areas of corruption, the area of GBVF, as well as the area of organized crime, in terms of what is ordinarily called serious organized crime, dealt with by the DPCI, the Hawks. Coming in, what a national director would have to do is to understand what is it that we do not have, that we need to have as prosecutors and as an institution. What is glaringly clear is that in terms of the capacity, all of those specialized units need more capacity. But numbers doesn't of necessity equate to performance. We therefore need capacity that has the relevant capabilities. And to that end, Minister,
Explain that.
to that end, we need to ensure that the prosecutors are trained in those relevant fields. When you look at the aspirant prosecutor program, from what my limited knowledge, it tends to be quite generic. The prosecutor program has got to aim to attract and retain a higher graduate than what it currently does. It must also ensure that the prosecutors coming into the aspirant prosecutor program are not just trained on general crime trends that they have to prosecute in the lower courts. They must know what the NPA comprises of, what their career path will be. And we have to ensure that those in those specialist units also make input into the curriculum and the training of the aspirant prosecutor. We need individuals who will also be able to understand what the performance output of the NPA must be. You see, Minister, where we are, we often make the mistake and say to staff in a very generalized way, for performance, we need to prioritize. What does that mean to prosecutors on the ground? How does that equate to performance? And I say that is where our ability to communicate with our staff becomes important. A national director must ensure that the entire institution understands, one, the strategic objectives and what we need to do to achieve those. One may say, but as a national director, there are special directors, there are directors of public prosecutions. That's their job. I beg to differ. A leader must ensure that his or her people understand what the institution is about, what their role and function is, and what they will bring through their performance to the indicators and to the achievement of the NPA. So performance together with training becomes a critical exercise. I am aware also, Minister, that we have programs with School of Prosecution at Justice College, so that it's over and beyond the aspirant prosecutor program. Existing prosecutors are also going back for touch-up courses, an important course that they're going to go for, which had already started. And what I like is I think we use a retired judge, and we also use outside counsels on leading expert evidence. It has been a shortcoming. It therefore limits our performance in specialized areas. It also means then we are unable to achieve our indicators. We also then have, through the School of Prosecution at Justice College, money laundering training. But then we have to say, how does an NDPP and an NPA change the game in terms of the specialist units? What we are doing is through the German-funded training, which Minister is aware of, that there is specialized training on organized crime as well as complex corruption. But the training then, which is quite different, is not just for the NPA. In those training programs, Minister, we have investigators from the DPCI as well as the South African Police Services. I know we have spoken to colleagues as well from the revenue services that where applicable, they are able to join those. So what it's saying is we are looking at managing the NPA's output differently by ensuring that we have a better, more capable staff. And then I think the last one for me would be, in terms of the main categories, is the morale of staff. We should never take people for granted, because disgruntled people can become quite an impediment to your operational activities and your output and your performance. You need to understand what brings their morale down. Is it just people who are disgruntled and grumpy? Is there legitimacy to the complaints and or the unhappiness they feel? And it becomes important that you don't take it for granted. But if you have the staff understanding that our work is to serve the people of the Republic, and we do that by ensuring we put out quality prosecutions based on evidence and the law, and that they are valued because that contributes to the output of the NPA, I think that is one way that we'd be able to just change that morale. And also, don't let people think that you favor one above the other. That would be the biggest mistake. Not all of us are equal. You do tend to build relationships better with some than with others, but you should never isolate staff and never let any category feel as though they do not bring something to the table. And where they don't, you've got to engage. Have your managers engage them about what it is that is going wrong and why we are not getting to where we need to get to as an organization.
Looking and listening to what you are raising now, Advocate Johnson, I go to your performance as IDEC and look at the statistics. This is the report that we've just tabled before Parliament. And it goes with the issues that the public have been raising about, and you are saying, and correctly so, you have identified the areas that NPA is not doing well in terms of stats on convictions. Corruption, GBVF, organized crime. Corruption falls under your work. And I look at the report, I see in terms of authorized investigations. I look at enrollment of cases versus what is expected. If we look at last year, we've moved from 2023-24 from 3 to 9. But if you are to look at the report of what would be expected as investigations, where, for example, you would have accused persons of 177, someone's entities about 22, but I must read it properly. Yeah, I'm reading it. If you look at that stats that we've provided and the report that we provided versus what we have as enrolled to court, that stats doesn't look good.
And I appreciate that. And if I may explain.
Because we need to understand, and I said to even this is consistent. I don't want to be told by the public that you've moved from one problem, you've made it a national problem. If it's a problem of performance is sitting at IDEC, maybe we have an opportunity to fix it there. But if we take you and bring it to NDPP, then we're expanding the problem of non-performance. Maybe share with us what is happening, why this performance?
So and I can speak for IDEC then, Minister. If you take IDEC, you would appreciate that when IDEC was formed by proclamation in April of 2019, it didn't have permanency. It didn't have a permanent structure. It worked on seconded individuals or duty reassigned from the DPCI and some from SAPS. When I took office in March of 2022, there were only 22 criminal investigators. There were a few more prosecutors than criminal investigators. And we had the majority of the staff that were there, financial investigators and other prosecutors, were all on contract. We then moved into dealing with the matters and enrolling the matters that we could. When IDEC then became permanent, Minister, you do see that there is a difference in the performance because we do have a bigger capacity. We don't have all the capacity, but that is not an excuse. We do have a bigger capacity. The cases themselves are voluminous. And Minister would appreciate that what we have to do is to be sure of the matters that we have to enroll when we enroll. We have been challenged and criticized, and legitimately so. If you take the matter of Matsela Koko, we received criticism that that matter had been enrolled and then the matter was struck off the roll. And to explain, because these matters are so large, if you are not careful and carefully consider where you are with the evidence, what else is left, what specialized services are required, we enrolled that matter earlier than we should have. That was a lesson we took. And in taking that lesson, we seek then to make sure that our matters are better prepared. The investigations are finalized to date of enrollment. We have ring-fenced matters so that we don't have open-ended investigations. You will appreciate that the matters that are on the roll, if you take the Transnet transaction advisory, if you take the Transnet locomotives matter, you take Alexco, It's that these are really big matters, Minister. And so we wanted to ensure that the matters are as ready as they can be when we enroll these matters. We had to take that lesson learned. When you make that kind of error in judgment, the public has every right, as they did, to criticize us. We have to show that we learned a lesson from there. So in terms of the enrollments, it takes longer because of the volume of the matters. But you will see that there are more investigations authorized than previous. It's because we now have a bigger capacity in terms of criminal and financial investigators, so that investigations are now churned out much faster than they used to be previously. Is it a satisfactory scenario in terms of the numbers? No, it isn't. But what it does say is we are careful about what we enroll, when we enroll, and we have to be sure that our enrollments are based on the evidence and the law. These are cases that affect people's lives. And so when we are accused of prematurely enrolling, it does not bode well. So those enrollments are key enrollments based on the year-to-year target. And although we've met the year-to-year target, and we will as well this year, both in terms of money laundering, investigations authorized, and prosecutions enrolled, we have met the targets each year. But it is slow.
Are this the only one, the Machela Koko matter? Because there are quite a number that we would not have done well. Or the Newman one, we were managed to appeal. You appealed and then you won. You got the appeal.
Yes.
And then, is that the only one that has fallen off out of the matters that you're dealing with? There was a withdrawal representation of matters as well.
No, there was one. The other matter, Minister, the court struck the Estina matter off the roll in August last year.
Yes.
And what had happened there is we had made disclosure to the defense a year before, and we were in court in August of last year. In April, I believe, we made electronic disclosure of the hard copy disclosure we had made. And when the accused appeared in court in August, they said to the court they didn't have enough time to go through the electronic disclosure. However, that which was electronic had already been made available in a different format a year prior. And that matter was removed from the roll for those reasons, because the court correctly felt that if you look at it, they should be given an opportunity to go through every medium of evidence that they are given. And for that reason, that matter was removed.
And this change of strategy, where you say you've learned, you're saying as IDEC, we have learned that enrolling prematurely and therefore we have changed. When was that change of strategy?
That change of strategy happened, Minister, shortly after the Coco matter was struck off the roll. We had to sit down and we had to understand why that matter got struck off the roll. When it got struck off the roll, two key areas of work were still to be done. We estimated it would take between 6 to 8 months. It was for the digital forensics and the financial forensic report. Unfortunately, it was not finished in that time. So these were a specialist field of work on both areas. So we had to sit down and say, given what sets us back, we have to deal differently with how we work out the timeframes for completion of that work. It's also become easier, Minister, because procuring the services is now easier. We also have Section 38s on board, together with the prosecutors, and the ability to assess the matters are done quite differently.
Then going back into the role of becoming an NDPP, as you have reflected on the GBVF stats, that is not satisfactory together with organized crime, and would agree these are the two areas that the public would not understand why we are not doing well. Should you be appointed, what would you do differently in these areas?
So, Minister, I really became keenly aware that the NPA was not doing well in the GBVF in September last year. And you would appreciate it's not my field of work. And we were in Parliament. And I remember it very clearly. I think it was the 11th of September. The previous minister, Mesa Malani, went with us to the Justice Portfolio Committee on a different issue. But Mem Kwebane raised with the national director if she could explain why in a quarter in the Western Cape, 245 GBVF cases were withdrawn. I heard about that for the first time, and that became a reality. I remember that when we went back, I do attend the EXCO meeting, which is the NDPP and her deputy nationals. And I raised at the meeting that what did we do wrong? It might not be my field of work, but what has the NPA done wrong? And one of the suggestions I remember making, only because you cannot come up with a solution when you don't understand. I asked if we could ask the special director and or the DPP to please provide the reasons for why those matters were withdrawn. What were the lessons to be learned? Because you cannot have, in one quarter, 245 is a number way too many and unfathomable. I am aware then, given those engagements, documentation went out from the head of the NPS at the time that this exercise is to be done. But what also then brought this matter more keenly to the fore was the Omotoso matter. And so this is what we had to grapple with. And I sat in some of the engagements because I was also unable to understand what we do, Minister, if I may. In the corruption matters in IDEC, we have a whole host of people that sit together. They are a team. But before matters are taken to court, we have an advisory panel. The advisory panel must be presented with the evidence, the challenges, the charges. And this is a panel that has nothing to do with the cases. That panel is also not an IDEC panel. It is from members in the Specialized Commercial Crimes Unit within the broader NPA. They also invite investigators to that body. It gives us a different method of assessing our matters. And I couldn't understand why we didn't have that in sexual offenses. And so for me, what a national director is supposed to do is to understand, one, what is the NPA's GBVF plan? Is it sufficient? I understand that there is a plan. I understand that with the GBVF now being declared a pandemic, that there has to be a different methodology. I think the methodology talks to our specialization, and are our prosecutors on par with what is required? What has become clear is if these matters were withdrawn, and I would assume invariably in the lower courts, which would be the regional and the district courts, it means that we have to get in there. What is the training that is required? What is the relationship between prosecutors, not just victims, but those who can provide a service to those victims? Are we using the TCCs? Where there's no TCCs in an area, Minister, who does a prosecutor activate to ensure that victims are prepared for court, not just through consultation with the prosecutor? What specialized services does the victim need over and beyond, I think, the psychosocial, medical that is provided through the TCC? But there has to be a different engagement between the special director of SOCA and the DPPs and those prosecutors. Who's keeping track of these high-profile matters? When do they keep track of the high-profile matters? Someone must intervene and engage. So whether it is the special director or the DPP who engages with the prosecutor, they have to keep their finger on that matter. What do their people need? Do they know that that matter is a high-profile matter? Have they assessed that matter correctly? And also to have ongoing training in terms of dealing with GBVF. It's a very sensitive matter. And I think in the manner in which I just generally understand how it is conducted, it cannot just be, it is a case to prosecute. It has its own nuances, and prosecutors need to understand what those nuances are. So as a national director, a national director has to make sure that the plan is implemented. Relationship with stakeholders internally and externally is being optimized, and that we have enough facilities to prepare our victims and witnesses. because one of the complaints that I did see is that at the last minute, victims and or witnesses do not want to go to court. When they do go to court, they're not as prepared as they should be. They falter and or fail in cross-examination, and that talks to us as prosecutors and whether or not we prepared them properly.
And on the organized crime?
On the organized crime, our relationship with the DPCI as well as the detectives organized crime is critical to how the NPA operates. And given that the NPA works on the prosecution guided investigations, I've always had a challenge if prosecutors write long notes to investigators. Do this, do this, do this, do this. It has to be prosecution guided, as in sitting down with the investigator, understanding what that matter needs. Now with organized crime, Minister, there is an organized crime strategy that was formulated by the NPA in consultation with the stakeholders. It was signed late in 2024. And what that seeks to do is to engage with different stakeholders, with SARS, with the FIC, as well as the DPCI. And what it seeks to do also is to have a better engagement with crime intelligence. The organized crime cannot be dealt with if we do not have credible intelligence, and crime threat analysis point us to modus, it points us to groupings, it points us to commodities, and it points us to what it is they are doing. If you take that, you take the investigations by the Hawks, guided by the prosecutors, organized crime can be dealt with differently. For me, the strategy, though, cannot be an NPA-driven strategy. Organized crime is a country problem, and I do appreciate that there would have to be more engagements, and there has been buy-in by the police and the DPCI, but we need them to be signatories to the document so that implementation is a proper buy-in and everyone understands their role and responsibilities.
Okay, before members do follow up on my issues and take over the question, just one thing that I observed, which was quite an interesting thing I saw. You've got on your reference Mr. K. Behari.
Correct.
What's your relationship? Friends, colleagues?
I had known him for over 35 years. Is it a week ago? He was suspended. I called him. I hadn't spoken to him in months. It's not somebody I engage with every day, but it is someone I've known for a very long time, Minister. I spoke to him.
How to put somebody, when did you change your reference on your CV?
The documents had already come in.
Oh, okay.
So I chose not to change it.
Okay.
I knew that if any issue arises, I must answer the issue. Okay. Changing it and then resending does look like I have something to hide, and I have nothing to hide.
I'm talking in the context when you say you have not spoken to him.
No,
in
he
a
had
long
been
time.
a reference. If you look at my CV, Minister, those two references had been references perhaps for the longest time on the CV, and had been there as well in the previous interview for NDPP. I called him and said to him, look, I had been nominated and I accepted a nomination. I cannot have you as a reference on my CV. I, however, cannot change it now because those documents have gone through. I did inform him that I will inform the panel, as I do, that he cannot be a reference on my CV. However, I must say, Minister, I did ask about the reasons for his suspension, which he did provide. And I did say to him, while I hear you, you have to appreciate, I am not judging you, but I cannot be having you on my CV. So I unfortunately did judge my friend, who hasn't been found guilty of anything. But in this position, the perceptions do matter. And Mr. Behari has understood
That's why I'm
that he,
flagging it as
that
head
he
of
will be-
IDEC, and with what is coming at the commission with reference to Ekurhuleni, I got concerned to see him as your reference, and that's why I wanted to ask the context of your relationship with him?
It had been such an old reference. I think even if I had to print CVs from prior, him and the other reference had always been there. The suspension happened after the nomination and CV submission, but I did tell him I have to remove him. And we also agreed that given the allegations that are made, given the fact that he is suspended, although we hadn't talked for months, we will not be able to talk at all till his issues are resolved. I did stand in judgment. I might lose much more friends because I am judgmental, but I had to do that because in the seat that I'm sitting in today for this position, the perceptions do matter. And I've had to do that.
Prof, you want to say something?
As the head of IDEC, I'll assume that your first instinct is vigilance and
Correct.
verification.
Correct?
And it does look like in some instances you allow for this profound blind spot.
Not
Because let me escort my logic.
Sure.
When you are to put someone for reference, the common practice is to go back to them and talk to them to say, I have applied for A, and now I've applied for B, I've applied for C. There is no retainer in reference where you say, you'll always be there.
Understood.
So it would look like you have not spoken with the person for months, but you were able to utilize their reference as such. You verify if the number is still the same, the address. Are you in agreement? Because at times some people will say, I cannot be referenced for this particular one. That's one. The second one from your previous answer is the one of most of the time you talk about the reforms that ought to be made based on precedents and what you have encountered as the NPA or IDEC. What I've not seen or heard coming out clearly, it's the strategic foresight to say this is the emerging trend of organized crime or corruption, which will define the future. Because you may resolve things that have happened from the past and have to go back to the drawing board for those things which are coming very fast into the future of crime and so forth. Would you comment on those two? I would have added the third one, but I know that my chair will say, don't overload or front load. Yes.
Prof, I take your point, and I'm being as forthright as I can be. I'm saying to you, those two references had been there. When I was nominated, I sent the person my CV that nominated me, and I sent it as is. I did make a few amendments in terms of things that I had done since then. I didn't think I needed to call them because I know his number didn't change. I hadn't spoken to him in months, but he's always had that same number. And I am aware he's lived at his address for quite some time. And I was not aware that he had changed. And I think given
So
that
that one, when was the last time? When you say months, when was the last time?
that I spoke to him, Minister, it could have been February or March, other than now last week when I did call
February, March this year.
this year.
Okay.
Yes. And I hadn't been to visit him in more than a year and a half, if not more. And with the other reference as well, there's nothing wrong with the other reference, but I also didn't call that reference because it is someone that I know her number has not changed. And I didn't think about the address. It's the reference and that they are contactable. But with Mr. Bihari, I known him most of my adult life for over 35 years. And when there was cause, Minister, to contact him, then I did. In terms of reforms to be made and the strategic foresight, sorry.
You just mentioned the second reference. I was going to come to it. Also, it's problematic for me. There's no position called acting judge in the Department of Justice.
I appreciate that, and that is
isn't
my error. She is a magistrate, a regional court magistrate at the moment. That is, I'm saying I didn't change those things at the time, and that it's
There's
carelessness
never
on my
been-
behalf.
Advocate Johnson, there's never been a position called acting judge. You are either a senior advocate, because acting judges come a week or two sessionals, but it's not a position.
At the time, she was acting as a judge in the High Court for a term.
Yeah, a term is 6 weeks. Yes, because I signed the appointments of acting judges. So
This was
per
on,
cycle, it's 6 weeks maximum.
I take
Others,
it.
for example, now, the acting judges will be now in December, when the normal judges are on recess, so that they can hear urgent matters. So it can be a position. I'm trying to flag that. Because I'm looking at this, it says, name of referee, Ms. Mngube, company, DOJ, position, acting judge, Pretoria High Court.
That was at the time. That is my error, and that is what I made the point. I sent my CV. I didn't change my references. She is a magistrate, and I apologize. I
So
didn't
she would
change
have
it
been a magistrate under DOJ.
under DOJ, and still is minister.
Okay. Answer the other one.
So in terms of the reforms to be made and the strategic foresight, Prof, the reforms are made within the various business units. And they are made where we do sit together for the NPA strategic plan. And it is in part of that planning where the strategy was that in order to deal with organized crime, there hadn't been, for example, a country organized crime strategy. Not even the police have one, Prof. They have standard operating procedures and they have how they work, but there wasn't a national organized crime strategy. That is part of the strategic foresight of the NPA team, that we need to formalize a strategy that is able to deal with the crime threat, which is organized crime. In doing so, I am aware that there were lots of consultations with people who are in the field, experts in the field who helped guide the strategy, as well as then with law enforcement. With the corruption, the strategy in IDEC has been to deal as holistically as we can with the various corruption matters that we have, and to ensure that they get enrolled. But I can see Prof's hand. I may not have answered it in the way the Prof anticipated.
No, he still had other questions as well.
Oh, my apologies.
I asked them not to go too much. They just ask questions, you answer, and then they can do a follow-up. Proceed, Prof.
The reason I invoke the issue of strategic foresight is that for the most part, either you talk of IDEC where you are, but we wanted you to lift your gaze to the horizon of a vision
For the NPA.
for the NPA. And that is where I was trying to say, can't we lift that gaze? Because you'll not be appointed back to IDEC should you be a successful candidate.
Understood.
But having said that, you mentioned twice the meeting of targets.
Correct.
Would meeting of target generated by your institution or your unit be the same as having an impact? Because there's one compliance matter where people say these are the targets. There's another one where you say, no matter the targets, the needle is not shifting. Can you reflect on that?
And correctly so, Prof. I know that there has been much debate. Even when we go to Parliament, Parliament has asked, well done, you've achieved your target. But what does that equate in terms of impact on the people whom you serve, which would be our South Africans, regardless of the crime type? And that is an issue that I know that we have been discussing in the NPA overall. How do we measure impact? Targets are numbers, but do those targets deal with the right cases? the cases that can elevate what we are doing. So if you take, for example, I remember there's a matter, it's a corruption matter, not in IDEC. It deals with the Lepelle Water Board, I think in Polokwane. And because of the fraud and corruption there, it was identified that the corruption in that matter must be dealt with. What it did is, if you deal with that matter, and if asset forfeiture is able to bring back the money, one might be able to put it back into the criminal asset recovery account and therefore give government the impetus to then put in a water supply for the community that was robbed of its water supply because of the corruption. That is how I consider as defining impact. Targets are numbers. And so what we have to do differently is understand which matters affect the South African population. So impact can be measured differently. It is what kind of recourse do you give to a community when you address the crime in that community? It's the same with drugs, Prof, is dealing with drugs and dealing with drug syndicates may bring relief when you arrest those persons. But in other matters, you need to be able to recoup the money so that services and service delivery goes back to a community. That for me is the impact of matters. Targets are part of performance achievement. They are part of the indicators, but not all targets talk to impact, because you have to identify those matters that will make impact across the board.
Sure, I would be honest.